Greetings, I'm Doc V, and today I want to share with you about systemic racism. Systemic racism is a term used when society decides to put things in place that are designed to hold the young black man or the older black man, try to hold him down and to keep him from excelling, to keep him from being a positive contributor to society, because the wider WIDER society is afraid of the competition, is afraid of the idealization of not being number one and having to share that spot with other races. This is what systemic racism was designed for. Now, we come from slavery. Slavery, of course, you know, is where blacks were taken from their homelands and dragged over to the United States and made to work for the white slave owners. The white slave owners, to keep blacks under control, would beat them, torture them, and kill them if they did not act right. They would make examples of these black slaves by taking the biggest, strongest slave. There's one incident where they tied a rope around the left leg and tied a rope around the right leg and hooked the slave up to two different horses, hit the horses took off and snatched the man in two, and they made every slave on that plantation watch what happened. And then the white slave owner said, "You saw that? Now get to work." And of course, most of them didn't want their legs and body pulled apart, and they got to work. So slavery was ended, and I could go into details about some of the horrific things that have happened or that happened during slavery, but I'm not going to cover that right now. That is not what this broadcast is about. I would now like to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation that was signed by President Lincoln back in 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. However, an interesting thing to note is the rate of deaths of the black slaves multiplied 5 times, like 500%, after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. In other words, when blacks were slaves, they were considered property. You don't mess with anybody's property. That's who does my garden. That's who picks my cotton. That's who cooks my food. That's who plants in my garden. That's who cleans my house and empties my toilets. That's my property. Once the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and the slaves were no longer property, they became a threat to the wider society. They were going after jobs, they were going after housing, they were going after ownership. Then they decided they wanted the right to vote or have a say on what's going on in society. This caused a problem. So put together Jim Crow laws. What were Jim Crow laws? Jim Crow laws were laws that regulated the advancement and the movement of African Americans. It was no joke. Jim Crow laws were put in place to control the advancement and the movement of black people. I'm going somewhere. Now, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, several incidents promoted the Civil Rights Act, and I'm going to talk about one. Rosa Parks. There was a law in a lot of the southern states where blacks had to ride the back of the bus and whites had the front seats in the bus. If a white person came into the bus and you were in the seat that they wanted, you had to get up. No questions asked. You get up and you hold onto the rope and you ride standing up. Well, one day, Rosa Parks got onto the bus and a white person came in and she said, "I'm not getting up." They arrested her. To make a long story short, this began or initiated the Montgomery bus boycott. Blacks started walking to work, walking to the stores, walking to where they had to be, day after day after day, until it almost shut down the transit system. And then they had to then allow blacks to ride and sit in any seat that they preferred or chose to ride in. Many of you might not know about this, but will recall the Black Wall Street 1921. Over in Oklahoma, out west, blacks obtained land and built a community that had doctors' offices. They had office buildings, doctors, lawyers, a rail system, transportation system, even an airport with pilots. It was a wonderful community where if someone's house caught on fire and was destroyed, the community would get together and rebuild that house for these people. It was a wonderful community. What happened in 1921? Over 100 years ago, whites became threatened by what they saw. And they came in and they firebombed, came in with guns and artillery, and they destroyed the whole community. They burned down houses. I think like 300 black men were killed. They tried to fight. They brought guns out. They tried to defend their property, but they could not. They had crop dusting planes that were dropping firebombs on the houses. This black community was destroyed. And the history of this was hidden for almost 100 years. It's just now coming out. The archives and the records are just now coming out. Black Wall Street 1921, Google it. Y'all know about Google. Everything is on Google. Google it and it'll talk about it. There's 4 or 5 different instances where I could talk about this same thing happening. Black communities rising up. Whites don't want blacks around. Well, get your own. And blacks went and got their own, and it looked a little bit threatening, so whites came over and destroyed it. Now, systemic racism is still upon us. Let me give you an example. I have a list here I would like to go through. Ahmaud Arbery, he was just jogging, and the whites saw him and they said, looks like he's up to something, let's go get him. They hunted him down and they shot him dead. Now, mind you, he's wearing tennis shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt. Where's the duffel bag that he's going to steal items from? Where's the getaway car? There was none. He was an innocent black man was shot. Another example, George Floyd. He was arrested, and Chauvin, the police officer, leaned on his neck, put his knee down on his neck, 200-pound man. He couldn't brace himself because his hands were handcuffed to his back. He was crying out for help, crying for his mama, until he just had to give in to the pressure on his neck, and it killed him. Eric Garner, he was selling tapes somewhere outside of a store. They called the police saying, you can't do this. And they jumped him. He was a big man. They jumped him, got him around the neck. He said, I can't breathe, 17 times, until finally he died. Breonna Taylor, there was a search for some drugs or for an escaped convict, and they got the wrong apartment. So they busted in on Breonna Taylor and started shooting. She's dead. She's innocent. Last incident, Botham Jean. He was at an apartment complex, and the police officer was tired, I guess, after her hard day at work. And she came in and the door was open to what she thought was her apartment. And she went in and started shooting and killed the man. And her concern in court was how to keep her job, not about the life of that man she destroyed, and not about the man's family. So, this is where I've come to. Racism is still upon us, but it has improved. There are laws and statutes put together that protect those of other races, and other genders, other nationalities, and other religions. United States is wonderful that I appreciate living in a country where we are supposed to be free. The laws are stated that we are free, but there are some people that do not like these laws. There are some people that are afraid and feel intimidated when they see you trying to rise up and compete for their jobs or try to date their daughter or their son. Oh my, we can't have that. There are some people that do not want to see us excel. Let me give you a couple of examples. In the 70s, or when I was in school, you could take an industrial arts class where they taught you they taught you woodworking, they taught you tools, they taught you air conditioning, they taught you carpentry, where you can get jobs doing this. The industrialization of schools was taken out. Why do you think that? The jury is still out on that. There's certain schools that some professors discourage blacks from taking certain courses. Well, you don't need to be a doctor or you don't need to be an engineer. And some of them even set up classes that are subjective in nature. What do I mean by subjective? What I mean by that, for example, you take a test that's multiple choice. Number 1 is A, number 2 is C, number 3 is D, and you're either right or wrong. But some professors, they go in and they give you a subjective test where they say, well, write about what you feel about management by objectives. And then they can decide in their minds that, well, no, I don't like that, and fail you. I've got information about that also. So I want to summarize and say that we've come a long way, young men and our more mature brothers. We've come a long way. There's opportunities to get your education. There's opportunities to get your student loans. There's choices to make that will keep you out of jail, to keep you off drugs, to keep you from being an alcoholic. There's things that you can do to prevent you from having 4 or 5 babies. There's things you can do that will prevent you from having 4 or 5 babies across the city that you didn't even care about the woman, but yet you planted a seed that's adding to the destruction of the black family. There's decisions that you can make to improve this situation. Another situation that really upsets me the most, when I see a young black male pull up in a car, gangster rap blaring out of the car windows while he's smoking marijuana coming out of the car. He's got tattoos all over his neck and grill. And I believe that one needs to be able to express themselves. I believe in self-expression. But jobs that you might want, people that can pull you out and help you with certain opportunities, people that can give you a chance, sometimes they don't like that look. And they don't like that careless, carefree attitude where I can wear what I want, pants sagging down, and I can do what I want to do. In the schools, I'm pretty tolerant with the young men when they sag their pants, because we can tell them, pull your pants up. That's not what we do here at the school. Pull your pants up. We can do that. But what's troubling is when I go to Walmart and I see a grown man, 35 years old, got a toddler next to him, 4 years old, and got a baby in a baby cart. And he got his pants down to his thighs, walking around sagging. I don't get it. I need help with this. I believe that we as a people need to represent each other, represent ourselves, and represent our communities and this particular demographic positively. I believe we need to represent ourselves positively. How you walk, how you talk, how you look, it does count. It does count. I'm Doc V. And I'll see you next time.